If you're someone who depends on digital tools for, well, for work, for life, for just about anything,
Which is basically everyone.
right, which is everyone today,
Hmm?
you've probably felt that really specific, kind of unsettling feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's that paradox where your phone gives you this incredible convenience, this amazing access, but at the same time, it leaves you with this, I don't know, this deep, pervasive anxiety about who's really in charge.
That tension you're talking about, it's absolutely central to how our digital world works now. It's
Mm.
not a bug. It's the core design.
And that's what we're here to talk about. Today, we are doing a deep dive into the concept that really explains this friction. The age of extraction.
Yeah, we're going to look at how these dominant digital platforms, the big ones, Amazon, Google, Facebook, how they evolved.
They started out as these open, exciting systems, right? They promised to decentralize power.
Exactly. And now they've meticulously transformed themselves into these massive instruments for the systematic extraction of wealth, of labor, of data, and maybe the most important thing, our attention.
So our mission for you in this deep dive is to really understand the mechanics of this extraction. What does it actually look like?
How do these giants pull it off, and what are the very real consequences for the economy and for workers?
And then we're going to turn to policy. We'll look at some historical ideas and some new proposals that might actually be able to rebalance this pretty alarming power dynamic.
To get it, though, you really have to start with the past.
Right, with the broken promises of the early internet. I mean, think back to the early 2000s, the optimism was just, it was everywhere.
Oh, it was overwhelming. The internet wasn't just a new technology. It was supposed to be this great force for, true economic and political democratization.
The idea was that the little guy could finally compete.
Absolutely. The vision was, well, it was utopian, really. The core belief was that the cost of entry, the cost of communication, had fallen so low that it would empower what they famously called the Army of Davids.
Small is the new big. I remember that phrase.
That was the mantra. The idea was you could start a super niche blog and compete with the New York Times, or a single person could use Amazon's infrastructure to sell a custom product to the whole world.
Bypassing the old industrial Goliaths entirely. It was this inspiring vision of a meritocracy.
It was, but you just have to look at the stock market today. That vision was fundamentally betrayed. We didn't get an army of Davids.
No, we got an oligarchy of trillion-dollar Goliaths. So where did it go so wrong? Why did that promise fail?
The failure was structural. The early optimists, they just missed a crucial variable.
Which was?
The nature of power held by network intermediaries. They focused on how cheap it was to create something, a product or content.
But they didn't think about the space where all that creation happens.
Exactly, the platforms. They failed to account for the unique, sticky, self-reinforcing power of these centralized spaces.
Amazon, Google, Facebook.
Yeah, they were supposed to be, humble hosts, just simple infrastructure making connections.
But instead, they became the gatekeepers.
The essential gatekeepers for everything, commerce, news, our social lives. And once they locked in that position, their goal shifted. It went from facilitating open exchange to maximizing extraction.
And that transformation from host to gatekeeper.
That is the single most important error in that whole original vision.
Okay, let's get right into the technical definition because this is really the engine of this whole deep dive. When we say extraction, we need to draw a clear line. How is it different from just profit?
Right. Companies are supposed to make a profit. That's how capitalism works.
So where's the line?
The line is crossed when competitive discipline just evaporates. So in microeconomic terms, extraction is about taking monopoly rent or super profit.
Okay, so what does that mean in plain English?
It means this isn't profit you get from being innovative or efficient. This is profit you get purely from market power. The ability to charge way, way more for something than its actual value just because the buyer has no realistic alternative.
It's pricing based on power, not production cost. Can you give us a really visceral example of that, something everyone has felt?
Oh, absolutely. Think about that moment where you feel completely and utterly trapped.
Okay.
So maybe it's an extreme emergency. You have to rush to the airport, you run up to the counter, and you have to buy a ticket for a flight leaving right now.
Oh, I'm already sweating just thinking about it.
The price they show you is just astronomical, right? It could be 10 times the normal fare.
You have to pay it.
You have to pay it. The airline knows you have zero other options in that moment. They have maximum pricing power. They can charge whatever your personal desperation level is, completely disconnected from the cost of putting you in that one empty seat.
Or the $17 beer at a football game.
Precisely. That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Or in, much more serious sectors, like healthcare.
Right.
A rare cancer drug might be priced at $100,000 a year. That price has absolutely nothing to do with what it costs to manufacture the pill.
It's priced at what the market will bear because the alternative is unthinkable.
The lack of an alternative is what creates the super profit. That is the visceral feeling of extraction. It's the feeling of undisciplined power being used against you.
And what's so fascinating here is how tech platforms have figured out how to create that same feeling of being trapped. But they disguise it. They wrap it in the one thing we all want more of: convenience.
Convenience has been weaponized. It's the perfect strategic mask for building monopoly power and making it too costly to leave.
Let's use that Gmail example. You get the notification, your storage is full, pay $3 a month to keep using your email.
I feel like you're reading my inbox.
I think you just paid that $3 last month, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
And you have to ask why. I mean, you could spend an entire Sunday afternoon trying to download your archives, sorting through 20 years of attachments.
Or even worse, migrating your entire digital life to a news service, updating 50 different accounts with your new email. It's a nightmare.
It's a total nightmare. So the path of least resistance, the most convenient path, is just to click yes and pay that recurring $3 fee.
It's a small, permanent toll you pay to avoid a huge bureaucratic headache.
And that's the core of the digital extraction strategy. Convenience has become the strategy, par excellence, of making sure people don't quit.
They make leaving so painful that you just agree to things you know aren't in your best interest.
The moment you realize you're acting against your own better judgment because you feel like you don't have a realistic choice, that's when you're experiencing extraction.
And this logic, this playbook of finding these points of extraction, it's not just in Silicon Valley anymore, is it?
Oh no, it has bled out into the whole economy. It's now the dominant playbook for any concentrated industry.
Like housing.
Take corporate housing. This is an area that has seen this massive influx of private equity. Historically, your local landlord, even a bad one, had some constraints.
Sure, their reputation in town, or maybe they just didn't want the hassle.
Exactly. Ethics, reputation, inertia. But now you have these huge corporate landlords managing hundreds of thousands of apartments across the country, and they're often using sophisticated software.
Right, I've read about this. Software that helps them set rents.
It does more than help. This software coordinates rent setting across all their properties to maximize revenue, and it fully enforces every single possible fee. Late fees, minor damage fees, you name it.
So the human element is just gone.
It's completely gone. It's a mechanized, automated rent increase that lacks any of those old constraining ethics. It's systematic, automated extraction applied to one of our most basic needs.
And the most disturbing examples seem to pop up in sectors where people are at their most vulnerable.
Because that's where the power asymmetry is the greatest. Think about private equity, buying up nursing homes or chains of veterinarian clinics.
Right.
These places, which were once primarily about care, they get transformed into profit centers. They start scrutinizing every single interaction to find the maximum possible extraction point.
From pushing unnecessary tests on a worried pet owner
to maximizing patient occupancy in a nursing home without increasing staff. When that ethical commitment to service is stripped away and replaced with a mandate for maximum return, extraction becomes the only business strategy left.
So the story of Amazon is just the perfect case study of this whole shift from being a facilitator to an extractor.
It really is.
Because many of us remember the early days of Amazon Marketplace, and it felt like the best version of that original internet promise.
It absolutely was. For hundreds of thousands of small businesses, the marketplace was a game changer. Amazon charged, pretty reasonable fees, maybe 15 to 20%.
And crucially, they solved fulfillment. That was the big one.
They solved the logistical nightmare. They built the infrastructure that actually let that army of Davids reach a global audience. It was dynamic, it was competitive.
So when did the system flip? What was the moment Amazon crossed that line from being the host to being the gatekeeper?
The shift happened when they achieved what's called a double monopoly.
A double monopoly?
Yeah, two-sided market lock-in. So on one side, they won the buyers with Prime. They created this expectation of free, fast shipping that no one else could match.
Then on the other side,
they won the sellers because the sheer size of the Prime membership base meant that if you wanted to sell online in the U.S., Amazon was the only game in town.
Once they had both sides locked in, the competitive pressure was gone.
Exactly. Once eBay was crushed and the sellers had nowhere else to go, They started to systematically turn the knobs and raise every single fee.
And the most clever and maybe the most destructive tool they used wasn't just raising the commission, it was weaponizing visibility through advertising.
That was the master stroke. Amazon realized they could monetize the scarcity of attention on their own platform.
So now when you search for something, the top results are almost always sponsored.
Inevitably, it's advertising. And this forces the sellers, the very same small businesses Amazon claimed to empower to bid against their own tiny margins just to get seen for a product you probably would have found organically 5 years ago.
There was a statistic in the sources about the revenue from this that it blew my mind.
It is jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
In 2024, Amazon's revenue just from sponsored links, just from that advertising hit, approximately $57 billion.
$57 billion.
To put that number in perspective, that single revenue stream is roughly double the collective revenue of every single newspaper in the world combined.
Wow. Just wow. That's an incredible amount of money. That's not from selling goods, but from forcing your own partners to pay a visibility tax.
It's a toll.
But I have to push back a little here because this is the argument you always hear. Doesn't that massive ad revenue ultimately help the consumer? Doesn't that $57 billion subsidize free Prime shipping or keep prices on other goods low?
Yeah.
So if the seller gets squeezed but I get a cheaper product, is that really extraction?
That is a critical question. And it gets to the heart of the flaw in that old consumer welfare standard we'll talk about later. And yes, in the very short term, ad revenue can subsidize some consumer costs. But the analysis shows two really big harms that outweigh that. First, it is fundamentally valueless extraction. That money isn't going into better product development. It's just going into a bidding war.
So the search results get worse.
The search results get much worse.
Yeah.
They're now optimized for who paid the most, not who's the best or the cheapest. Critics call it the Enshittification of the platform.
Okay, and the second harm?
The second harm is to the ecosystem itself. By forcing all these small businesses to sink their margins into non-productive advertising, you're draining the resources they could be using to actually innovate or compete long-term.
They're just stuck in survival mode.
Constantly. So the immediate consumer benefit you might see is purchased at the cost of the platform's overall quality and the long-term health of the entire small business sector.
And that's before we even get to Amazon's more aggressive advantage, their dual role as both the marketplace and a competitor on that marketplace.
Which creates a massive, massive data conflict of interest.
Right, this is about Amazon's data arsenal. What kind of data are we talking about? It's more than just what's selling well, right?
Oh, it's so much more. We're not talking about general trends. We're talking about uniquely granular asymmetrical data. They know, for instance, the exact products you clicked on but didn't buy.
They know how long your mouse hovered over a picture.
Exactly. They know the precise price change that finally made you click buy. And, most importantly, they know the complete uncensored revenue data, the profit margins, even the suppliers of every single third-party seller on their platform.
That is the ultimate market intelligence.
It gives them a completely unrivaled view into what works across more than half of all U.S. e-commerce. And they use that intelligence for what's called the copycat strategy.
So they see a popular item.
They see a popular item, they identify exactly what makes it successful, a specific pet toy, a piece of clothing, a phone charger, and then they just produce their own private label version like Amazon Basics.
Often using the same manufacturer, I've heard.
Often going right to the same manufacturer to undercut the original seller on price.
And this obviously has a chilling effect on anyone who wants to bring something new to the platform.
The data is pretty clear on this. Studies show that when Amazon enters a specific product category, it strongly dissuades third-party sellers from continuing to offer the product.
I mean, why would you? Why would you invest years developing a new product only to have the platform you depend on steal your idea the second you prove it works?
You wouldn't. And it means fewer innovative and new products are brought to the marketplace in the long run.
Which leads right into the whole mechanism of self-preferencing and foreclosure. Amazon tilting the rules of the game to favor itself.
The core of this is the buy box, that big button that says add to cart.
Right.
Estimates suggest something like 82% of all sales on Amazon go through that buy box. And Amazon's algorithm is engineered to give that box to its own products, or to products that use its fulfillment service, FBA.
Even when there might be cheaper or better options available from other sellers?
Even then, that's self-preferencing. The gatekeeper's tipping the scales in its own favor.
And sometimes it's not even that subtle. Sometimes they just kick the competition out entirely.
Yes, that's foreclosure. We've seen clear evidence of Amazon using its policy leverage to enforce what are called minimum advertised prices, or MAPs, for certain brands.
Like water filters or some Apple products.
Exactly. Amazon will pressure the brand owner to sell directly to them, and in exchange, Amazon agrees to expel any third-party sellers who try to sell that same product for less.
And once the competition is gone.
Once the competition is gone, Amazon becomes the sole vendor, and what we consistently see is that they then raise the price. It's a classic textbook monopoly maneuver.
We've laid out how this extraction works on the business side, but the effect on labor is just as stark. The success story of these platforms isn't just about network effects and money. It's critically dependent on what our sources call surplus informal labor.
This is a global thing, but it's especially acute in developing economies.
Yeah.
In the global south, you have giants like Grab, Gojek, Uber, and they embed themselves in these local economies that already have a lot of informal work and really weak labor protections.
And they externalize all the risk.
They externalize nearly everything: fuel, insurance, healthcare, vehicle maintenance. It all gets pushed onto the individual worker based on the legal fiction that they're independent contractors, not employees.
Which is the complete opposite of the marketing, right?
Yeah.
All that talk about flexibility and being your own boss.
For many gig workers, that flexibility is just a myth that leads directly to severe precarity. The power asymmetry is just enormous.
And the main tool of control isn't a human manager anymore.
No, the boss is the algorithm management. The algorithm decides your pay, it monitors your every move, it assigns your tasks, and it enforces discipline.
And it has no empathy. You can't negotiate with it.
You can't. And this control is exercised through metrics and gamification.
Okay, what do you mean by that? How does the algorithm actually control a driver?
Well, it uses these high-stakes metrics, like your acceptance rate or your efficiency score. So if you don't accept enough orders fast enough, or if your score drops, the algorithm can basically punish you. It can reduce your visibility for the good, lucrative orders. It effectively puts you in an economic penalty box.
So it forces you to take the low-paying, high-risk jobs just to stay in the system's good graces.
Precisely. And this is intensified through gamification.
Badges, leaderboards.
Exactly. Badges, leaderboards, these temporary surge bonuses that are constantly changing. It taps into this very human psychological desire to win the game, and it pushes workers toward overwork and exhaustion.
All while maintaining the illusion that they're in control.
And the result is low pay, no social safety net, and systemic overwork. It's a direct consequence of the algorithm's search for maximum labor extraction.
And this isn't just about delivery drivers. The same logic is being applied inside warehouses.
For sure. Think about these huge e-commerce fulfillment centers, like Mercado Libre in Argentina or others around the world. These digital systems track every single second of a worker's activity.
And there's a human manager using that data.
Right, a human layer using that data to impose incredibly demanding quotas and stressful conditions. The goal is the same: eliminate worker autonomy in favor of a systemic efficiency that only benefits the platform owner.
But despite all this, despite the atomization and having code as your boss, workers are fighting back.
They are. The resistance is actually surprisingly robust. We see drivers and couriers in places like Brazil, India, Indonesia using the platform's own chat features or WhatsApp groups to coordinate and share information.
They're fighting back against what you called gamification from above.
That's right. They're challenging the unilateral control. And it takes two main forms.
You mentioned infrapolitics and collective resistance. Can you break those down?
Sure. Infrapolitics is the covert day-to-day stuff. It's the quiet sabotage, the exploitation of loopholes.
So like drivers figuring out a glitch in the app.
Exactly. Sharing glitches that let them reject bad orders without getting penalized, or deliberately manipulating their GPS to avoid areas they know are unsafe or unprofitable. It's the small, individual acts of resistance.
Just trying to survive the system.
Right. It's necessary for survival. But some analysis suggests that this kind of low-level resistance can actually, inadvertently, keep the whole system in place because it only asks for minor tweaks, not structural change.
Which brings us to the second, more powerful form.
Collective resistance. This is the open, organized challenge. Mass action, strikes, and most importantly, forming unions or associations.
This is about changing the rules of the game.
The goal here is to build gamification from below. It's an attempt to force the platform to the negotiating table and install actual rules of the road-like minimum pay per trip, or better social protections. It's a fight to create a fairer environment for everyone.
Okay, let's zoom back out to the market structure. We often think of the digital economy as being incredibly fast-moving, that today's giant is tomorrow's dinosaur.
Right, the myth of constant disruption.
But the sources we're looking at argue that modern tech power is uniquely durable. Why is it so hard to disrupt these companies?
It really comes down to a few classic economic mechanisms that now happen at an instant global scale. And the big one is network effects.
The more people use it, the better it gets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The more people use Google search, the better its data becomes, which makes the product better, which attracts the next user. This creates these incredibly high barriers to entry and leads to classic winner-take-all dynamics.
Once a platform becomes dominant, its power is just really, really sticky.
It's persistent and very hard to dislodge. And that durability lets them create the biggest structural harm to the economy.
The kill zone.
A kill zone. This concept is so important because it's not just about hurting today's businesses. It's about actively poisoning the potential of tomorrow's innovators.
So a kill zone is an area of the market where entrepreneurs and investors just won't go.
They won't go because they know that if they actually succeed, their defeat is guaranteed. The dominant platforms use their gatekeeper position to either just buy you out or copy your idea and crush you.
It's like the moment a startup gets on their radar as a threat, a clock starts ticking, either acquisition or annihilation.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the chilling effect starts with the money, with venture capitalists.
Right. The sources had quotes from VCs.
They're surprisingly candid about it. They'll just tell you, we don't touch anything that comes too close to Facebook, Google, or Amazon. Why would you invest millions in a company that could just be erased overnight by an algorithm change?
And there's actual empirical evidence that the threat alone is enough to change how companies behave.
Oh, yeah. There's fascinating research on app developers.
Yeah.
It shows that when even the threat of Google entering their app category emerges, developers with product in that space significantly reduce updates and maintenance.
So they just give up on the product.
They pivot. They either move to an unaffected market or, and this is really key, they focus on short-term profits. They raise prices and try to harvest whatever value they can from the product before the inevitable collapse.
They stop innovating and start extracting.
It's the only rational thing to do when you're facing guaranteed defeat. And it proves that the market structure itself, just the existence of these gatekeepers, is what drives the outcome.
And we've seen so many specific examples of this kind of gatekeeper abuse.
So many. I mean, think about the classic feud between Apple and Spotify.
Right. Apple runs the platform, the App Store.
And when Spotify got successful, Apple launched a direct competitor, Apple Music. And then Apple was accused of using its control over the App Store's rules to hamstring Spotify, preventing them from telling their own subscribers about cheaper ways to pay.
The gatekeeper competing with its own tenant.
It's a fundamental conflict. And Facebook was notorious for this.
Their strategy was either buy or bury.
Absolutely. They used their own network data and data from controversial acquisitions like the Onavo VPN to spot rising stars. Then they'd show up with an offer you couldn't refuse.
Be acquired now.
Or, we will dedicate our vast resources to building an identical clone and use our network to crush you. Instagram and WhatsApp were the successful acquisitions. Countless others were simply neutralized.
And Amazon does this with physical products and its voice assistant, Alexa.
Yes. Amazon has this $100 million Alexa fund to support startups making skills and hardware. It sounds great, like they're fostering innovation.
But there's a catch.
But some investors worry they're just using the fund to mine for ideas. There was a clear example with a startup called Nucleus. They got funding to make a video intercom device.
And then
Shortly after, Amazon released the Echo Show, which was an almost identical product. The threat here is twofold. If you succeed, Amazon copies you. If you fail, Amazon learns from your failure. The dominant firm always wins.
Okay, so the diagnosis seems pretty clear. This concentrated vertical power leads to extraction, and it chills innovation. So the billion-dollar question is, what can we actually do about it?
Right. What are the policy tools?
Because for the better part of 50 years, our main tool, antitrust law, has basically failed to deal with this kind of structural power.
And that failure really stems from a huge policy shift that happened back in the 1970s.
Before that, antitrust was different.
It was guided by what's known as the Brandeisian vision. Louis Brandeis believed that concentrated power in and of itself was dangerous. Dangerous to democracy, dangerous to innovation.
It didn't matter if the company was offering low prices.
No. The focus was on preventing dangerous structure. But then the pendulum swung hard the other way, toward the Chicago school philosophy.
Which brought us the consumer welfare standard.
Exactly. And that standard says that antitrust enforcement should only really care about one thing: is a company raising short-term prices for consumers.
And that's why the tech giants, who often offer free services like search or drive down prices like Amazon, were basically immune from challenge for decades.
They were. The consumer welfare standard just couldn't see the other harms: the data appropriation, the loss of privacy, the precarity of labor, and especially the long-term innovation chill of the kill zone.
So enforcement got weaker and weaker, and we ended up with massive concentration in all these industries.
Airlines, pharma, cable, and now tech. And the legal scrutiny of vertical integration, a company being both the platform and a competitor on it, that just practically vanished.
So if that old framework is broken, what's the solution? This brings us to the argument that we need to start treating these platforms like utilities.
Or common carriers.
Mm.
This is a prescription from key policy experts. The core idea is structural. We have to stop the extraction by forcing these platforms to go back to what they were supposed to be.
Humble, low-cost facilitators.
Exactly. Hosts, not the main players. We need to impose clear rules of the game that ensure non-discrimination.
I love the analogy you use, comparing the internet to the electric system.
Think about the electric grid. It's the original, incredibly successful common carrier. It provides the platform electricity at a low, regulated cost with universal access.
But the electric company didn't invent the toaster.
Yeah, or the computer, or the television. Others innovated on top of that neutral infrastructure. But today's platforms, they have what some call main character syndrome.
Right.
They keep inserting themselves into the creative role they're only supposed to be hosting. We need to force them to step back and just be the hosts again.
And the main policy tool for that is structural separation, limiting what these gatekeepers are allowed to do.
Right. And it's often favored because it's a cleaner solution. It requires less constant government meddling than trying to police their behavior day to day.
So what are the two main models for this?
There are two primary separation models for these bottleneck firms. The first is functional separation, which is a partial ban.
Okay, what would that look like for, say, Google?
Under functional separation, Google Search would have to act as a neutral utility. Google could still own Google Flights, but the search algorithm, the platform, would be legally required to treat Google Flights exactly the same as it treats Expedia or Kayak.
No more putting its own stuff at the top.
No more self-preferencing. The company stays together, but the rules of engagement are neutral and enforceable.
And the second model is more drastic.
Much more drastic. It's full structural separation, a total ban. This requires a complete divestiture, separate ownership, separate management, a true breakup.
So what would that do to Amazon?
In that scenario, the Amazon marketplace, the fulfillment centers, the website itself, that would all be one company, acting as a neutral host. The retail operation, the part that sells Amazon Basics and other goods, would have to be sold off to a completely separate, unaffiliated company.
So the marketplace owner would be legally barred from competing on its own platform.
Which eliminates the conflict of interest by design. No more copycat strategy, no more self-preferencing.
Now, these are really powerful ideas, but we have to talk about the trade-off. This is the big argument against it. If you break up these companies, don't you lose efficiency? Doesn't that integration, like FBA shipping with the marketplace, create real cost savings for consumers?
That is the crucial trade-off, and it's the heart of the resistance from the platforms. And yes, when you separate functions, you might lose some of what's called static efficiency.
The cost savings from that tight integration.
Right. But the policy argument is that what you lose in static efficiency, you more than make up for with a massive gain in dynamic efficiency.
And dynamic efficiency is long-term innovation.
It's long-term structural innovation.
Yeah.
If you eliminate the kill zone, suddenly thousands of entrepreneurs and investors feel safe again. They can innovate in all these markets without fearing they'll just be crushed.
So you get this explosion of decentralized innovation.
An explosion of new products, new services, new technologies that far outweighs the marginal cost savings from integration. The goal isn't central planning. It's balanced economic power. Because history shows us that both centralized socialism and brute monopoly capitalism are disastrous over the long term.
And this whole movement, this push for structural change, is really summed up in the neo-Brandeisian agenda.
That's right. And that agenda understands that waiting for a deadlocked Congress to pass a big new law is probably a losing strategy.
So it calls for more aggressive executive action.
Aggressive action using the laws we already have, like the Sherman Act and the Clayton Act. This means radically rethinking how we review mergers. And critically, it means the government has to be willing to bring the big cases again, to actually try to break companies up. The belief is that the structure has to be fixed before the market can ever hope to heal itself. Hashtag outre lotro.
So, this deep dive into the age of extraction, I think it makes it really clear that the frustration you feel in the digital world isn't just a personal thing, it's systematic leverage.
Mhm. Extraction is that non-competitive rent. It's taken from monopoly power, but it's meticulously masked by this relentless pursuit of convenience.
And we've seen how that logic just warps incentives for everyone. From the small Amazon seller trapped in that $57 billion ad vortex.
To the gig worker being managed by an algorithm into a state of severe precarity, to the potential innovator who never even starts because they're in the kill zone.
So, this conversation about how we regulate these powerful digital gatekeepers, it's really a debate about what kind of civilization we want to live in.
It is. I mean, our whole system of government, the Constitution, it's all based on a separation of powers to prevent dangerous concentrations of authority.
And the argument is that this principle has to extend to the private sector, to these massive commercial entities.
As these tech platforms become more and more indispensable, as they become the gatekeepers for commerce, for speech, even for basic things like housing, we're left with a final and, I think, provocative thought.
Go for it.
If we fail to draw clear lines, if we fail to separate this immense private monopoly power from public influence, and if the majority of our economic life becomes subject to this systematic extraction just to enrich a tiny centralized group of capital owners, does this concentration risk more than just market inefficiency? Does it risk a profound societal backslide? A move toward a new, technologically advanced and algorithmically enforced form of economic feudalism?
That is a terrifying question.
And it's one we have to answer now, before that structure solidifies forever.